90% of people never need to buy any other knife than this one. Today I'll show you why this knife alone can fulfill your daily culinary needs, and why it will even help you become a better cook. So hang on while we explore just exactly what it is that makes this knife so special. In this video, I will take you through my 3 points about this knife and why you should go buy one for yourself. And as a bonus, I will share an extra tip at the end of the video about knife buying that will save you potentially a lot of money throughout your life. Before we get too deep into everything, let me just say that I'm in no way sponsored by Victorinox when making this video. They haven't paid or sent me anything whatsoever. This is my personal opinion on this knife based on years of owning multiple Victorinox knives and spending years in a professional kitchen handling knives of all kinds. Let's introduce the knife properly. We are talking about the Victorinox Swiss Classic 7-inch Santoku, though what I say about this knife is true about the whole range of knives in the Swiss Classic series. The first point I would like to make about this knife is that the price to performance is extremely good. It's a perfect example of getting 80% of the value for 20% of the price. You can buy this knife, although without the wooden handle, for around $62 at the moment. And considering that you get a knife that's actually worth using, and as you can see in the intro, is very hard to break, that's in my opinion a pretty amazing bang for the buck. The cool thing about Victorinox, yes, the same guys that makes army knives, is that they have a wide array of knives in this series that are all very good for the price. So you can get the knife that suits your needs perfectly. The knives, not accounting for the smaller paring knives, which by the way are also great, vary between $42 for a small 5-inch chef's knife to $103 for the big 12-inch carving knife. But most are somewhere in between, which brings me to, for many of them, you can, like I did, choose to get a wooden handle for a slight increase in price. The stock Vibrox handle is perfectly nice, as you can see on this boning knife. I just like the look of the rosewood better. You can also choose to get a fluted blade on some of them, which makes the food stick less to the blade. Even though it's a cheap knife, you get a knife with proper edge geometry. By edge geometry, I mean the 3-dimensional shape of the blade. This is one of the main factors in how a knife handles and performs when cutting food. First important thing is that it has a distal taper. This means it gets thinner from the base towards the point of the knife. This is not always the case with cheap knives, as I will show you in a moment. With a distal taper, you get that very fine tip section that allows you to use the same knife for smaller stuff like garlic, as well as, let's say, carrots. Second thing is that it also has a profile taper. This means that it gets thinner starting at the spine of the knife and thins out towards the edge. This is extremely important in regards to how well a knife cuts. As I mentioned, let's bring in a bad example of a cheap kitchen knife. This knife here is an example of a chef's knife with no proper tapering. As you can see, it has the same thickness all the way down from the spine until very close to the edge, where it starts to taper aggressively. And also no distal taper at all, except for the tiny bit the thin strip of aggressive profile taper on each side gives the illusion of just before the tip. The taper on this knife is not to be mistaken as the usually one-sided grounding you see on some Japanese knives. On those knives, it has a purpose for certain tasks. The taper on this knife is not like that, although you get the impression that they purposely tried to give it an Eastern look. Because of this short and aggressive profile taper, you get a cross-section that looks like this, instead of this, which means it's splitting your food rather than cutting it. Back to the Victorinox knife. These two types of tapers on the Victorinox knife, combined with it having a very thin blade to begin with, makes for an excellent cutting experience. Third is that it has no heel guard. This is a good thing. You don't need a heel guard. When holding a knife properly, it's extremely rare to cut yourself on the heel. All that heel guard does is preventing you from sharpening the knife. Because you can't sharpen all the way to the heel, you will over time end up having a knife looking something like this. This prevents the edge from contacting the cutting board, which means a terrible knife to work with, basically useless. This leads me to my next point. The steel. The Victorinox kitchen knives have a Rockwell hardness of 56. This is pretty soft compared to high-end knives at around 60+. But I will argue that for this knife, 56 is just right. With hardness comes chipping, and if you're not experienced with high-end knives, this can be more of a curse than a gift. The Victorinox knives can take an almost endless amount of abuse without breaking, which makes them suitable for the majority of people. The softness does however mean that it goes dull a bit faster, but with day-to-day use in a standard home setting, it will hold an edge for months, and if you grow accustomed to using a honing rod to realign the edge before use, this will be even more true. The softness, however, also means that it's much easier to resharpen, which makes it ideal for people who might have one of many different sharpening tools lying around in a drawer. And because it's not a fancy knife, people will be more prone to actually getting to sharpening it, which means practicing this skill more. I would never, and I wouldn't recommend anyone to ever run a high-end Japanese blade through a tool for easy sharpening or a motorized sharpener. But with the Victorinox knife, go ahead and get familiar with what it means for a knife to be sharp, honing, and maybe even trying out a sharpening block for the first time, because you will be bad at it at first, but with this knife, it doesn't matter. This is the perfect knife to grow your confidence with both knife skills when cooking, but also when it comes to maintaining a knife. This knife allows you to focus on becoming a better cook instead of worrying about your knife breaking, and at some point it will maybe even make sense for you to buy a beautiful high-end knife. I personally only owned Victorinox knives for the first couple of years training to become a chef. In this bonus section, I will share my extra tip, which is a recommendation to never buy a knife set, unless you by chance find a set of knives you were about to buy anyway at a discount. Instead, just buy one proper knife that can cater to most of your needs. I would suggest this Santoku or the 8-inch chef's knife. These knives can do most things. Use them for a while and notice the moments where they fall short. If a problem occurs often, then it might be time to find a knife that suits that particular job, and then go buy it. Over time, you will have a selection of knives that suit your needs, and will avoid having some weird looking knife you've never used, because to be honest, you're not really sure what it's for, but you got it in a knife set at some point. This will also save you money in the long run. Knife sets are usually a way to make you spend more money than you would otherwise. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this video was useful for you, and if it helped you in any way, please remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this one.